Thanks very much, and thanks for inviting me along, and for all of you attending the session as well. I think I've been 30 years of experience, yes. Whether or not I'm going to give you a wealth of knowledge is yet to be seen, but hopefully we'll learn something out of the session as we go through. So I'm going to talk a little bit about expanding business to the UK. I've been UK based for most of my career, and worked very heavily with North American companies as well as companies coming into UK, Europe from Asia. So with that experience, hopefully we'll work through some of the things to bear in mind and some of the pitfalls and things to avoid as well. So basic agenda, a little bit background on me and the team here at Salesforce Europe, or SFE as we're known. When to go international, why the UK, just some numbers around what we can bring to not particular Canadian businesses as a result of, as Claudia mentioned, the trading agreement we have with you. Bit of culture, bit of gossip. I think that's worth going through. Be interesting to see some of the things that do differ between North America and the UK. Less so Europe, but just between us. What do you need and what do you not need, and then some of the options and things to think about in ways that you could expand. So a little bit on us. We were founded originally by Rick Pizzoli. Rick Pizzoli was born in San Francisco. He actually lived next door to Benioff, who, as you know, founded Salesforce Europe. He went on to slightly more success and size than we are, but as a business now, we've helped over 300 companies in the last 20 years launch across Europe. Rick originally came into Europe about 25 years ago to bring Nortel here. Realised that Europe's very different to North America. North America, roughly 50 states, Europe, roughly 50 countries. But the cultural differences, the language differences, the legal differences between those countries and the pitfalls that went with it made him think about how he could bring other companies to Europe and how he could set up a business that maybe could help minimize the risk of that expansion and use a network of contacts over here to help companies launch quickly and gain that first beachhead into territory. I joined Rick about 11 years ago. I had a company doing a very similar thing that I'd founded around that time, and we were just very synergistic in our ideas, and so brought those two companies together. We've had through SFE at least 2 or 3 exits. I'll talk about one at the end of this, which was an interesting one, hopefully to you guys as a team as well. So as I said, as a business, we've got 100 active sales execs. We have around about 100, it's now about 100 BDRs or SDRs. We call them business development reps, are the ones who tend to go out to market. SDR, sales development reps, are dealing with the inbound, and that's a combined team. That's based, as you can see from the map, the majority of the inside sales and lead generation is based in the UK. We also have a hub down in Madrid, which is where Rick now lives and has lived since he moved over here. He's now married, has 3 children, and is in fact a Spanish and American citizen. So that's how much he loved coming over to Europe. Overall, we now operate across around about 30 countries. The majority of those countries are in Western and Central Eastern Europe. We also operate in certain parts of Asia and in the US, LATAM, and Canada as well. We've done work in Canada with organizations like Wattpad, who you may know. And as a business, we have supported over, I think I said 300, it's actually now 400. I need to keep up to date with my own slides, since 2003 when we started. So whole objective of today is really to help you better prepare for an expansion to the UK. That's the goal here. Please ask questions. Please feel free to reach out to me after the session as well if you want to just get any insight or any ideas following this. So the key thing to start with is, when do you go international? For me, there's a bit of a checklist here. I think you need a well-defined sweet spot of what you do. You need one thing that really stands out, but to be honest, if you've got 2 or 3, even better. We all know the technology world these days. It's very rare that you walk into a green field with a brand new product. There are certain types of technology areas and certain types of product areas where that's true. But often what you're bringing to market is a new mousetrap that does it in a better way. So it's very important to understand that clear blue water between you and what other competition in that territory and in the UK might be doing. You need paying customers in your home market. I think, we normally look for organizations that are $1 million plus in revenue, ARR. It's much less than, and typically funded. Much less than that, it's often a bit too hand to mouth. And I think understanding the costs of any expansion is really important. It does depend a lot on the product. But again, I think that 1 million is a good number. And I would say it should be more than that if you're going into a lower priced, more transactional market. It can be 1 million if you're going into if your product is fairly unique. And for example, the UK has a better fit than the home market of Canada. So investment to expand. For a B2B software company, I'd say ideally you need to be thinking in terms of $750K to $1 million. It does vary again, as I said, by product, by market. But if you're not putting that money aside, salespeople in Europe are very, very expensive. You need to be aware as well of the fact that at the end of the day, there are hidden costs that you cover yourselves. Founders and entrepreneurs will be doing an awful lot of the selling out in the market. When you come to a new market, you've not just got to find a salesman, you've also got to find someone who's going to do the marketing. You've got to find somebody who's going to potentially manage that salesperson, somebody who's going to deliver product, etc., etc. So, it does vary, but for a B2B software company, I'd say that's an ideal benchmark in terms of the money that's needed. And give it time. This is the other thing I would say is that you really realistically need to think about 12 months. We have an awful lot of people who come to talk to us and say, I want to dip my toe in the water for 3 months. And being honest with you, I just don't think that is the right strategy unless all you're doing is an initial market test with a view to then return, plan, and then launch into Europe. And I think that's the key thing. So ideally 12 months. You need a well-rounded team to support that growth. You can't, I think when I see companies failing in expansion, whether it's the UK or the rest of Europe or anywhere, to be honest, it's 9 times out of 10 because they either take on a channel partner and think that partner's going to deliver the world to them, or alternatively, they just put a salesman in a territory and give him a few one-pagers and hope he's going to survive. You need to make sure that the team around you understands and reacts to the messages coming out of that market, gives the right support to the salesperson as they go through as well. And I think those are really important factors. Management, marketing, sales, and operations really is the key. And then also make sure you've got a documented plan and a strategy. You need the roadmap that image is on the right-hand side. And I can't stress enough about that planning part. Dipping your toe in the water is not something you want to do because when you enter a market, and particularly the UK market, if you have to retrench from it, it can be very damaging and it may set you back 2 to 3 years. So in terms of that plan, I think the first thing is recognizing what stage you're at. There's 3 places that I see businesses. This is a slide we use quite a lot in some of our consulting engagements. There's 3 sort of stages or levels I see businesses at. They learn, where they're founder driven, they're investigating their market. It's a lot about personal contacts and the deals that you've done. And you maybe have a few customers that you've sold to, but perhaps one of them is the big elephant in the funding area for you to do the expansion. So it really is about understanding, am I at that point? And if I am at that point and the UK market's the right place to go to, what do I now do? How do I do it? What do I have to invest in it, etc. If you're in the repeat stage, you're probably more familiar with what's driving the real reasons that people buy from you. You're probably more familiar with those USPs, and you're probably more familiar with the competition you're going to face both in the UK, because it's going to be very similar to the competition you face in North America. So again, you'll see this slide when the deck's shared with you and the video shared with you. So I mean, have a think about where you fit in this, and this will drive your behaviour and how you plan that expansion. And remember too, development these days is a lot faster than it used to be. A set of APIs, and I don't mean to undermine any product that's out there, but if you're looking at SaaS technology, APIs, an interface, you can get a product to market very quickly. And that means if you do it well, your competition's going to try and do it well after you. Now, they may not deliver the full functionality suite, etc., but understanding where you are in this model will help you understand how to compete with other people in the market you're coming into. So have a strategy. I've called it here a marketing strategy because I think this, if you understand what I was talking about in the last slide, and then you understand how you're going to go to market, actually getting a salesman on board or having a channel isn't going to make you succeed in the UK. What you really need to understand is what your ideal customer profile looks like. What is the market definition? What are the buyer needs that you're facing, and what does the competition look like? Are there any macro industry trends that are driving change at the moment, or may be, likewise, and this is a really good point actually, is whatever you're finding as a macro trend or that's working in North America might not work when you come to the UK, may work again in Germany. So again, understanding that and looking at that in the context of both your market definition, your ideal customer profile, and the target personas in that is really important. And I think as far as I would say, any expansion into the UK, you don't really necessarily need much of that execution piece if you've done your planning right, because the first person in territory is going to do an awful lot of that execution on your behalf. So why is that important? I wanted to share this. I apologise for the fuzziness of the image here, but I did take it off of a Notion's website. But it's a really interesting thing. I was actually at an event of theirs recently where this was presented. And I think it was good to see how investors view current companies' readiness for funding. No longer is just having a strategy and mentioning the letters AI in your strapline going to be good enough to get you millions of dollars. Actually, what investors are looking for now is either small profitability. It doesn't have to be high profitability, but it does need to be there, and it needs to be near term. Or they're looking at the other side where actually you might be losing money, but you've got a high growth, but that high growth is highly repeatable and it exists, it's provable, and it's defined. What they're not looking for is the promise of in the middle, which was, when you look back 3 years ago, you could get an awful lot of money for that sort of, well, I've got a great idea, I'm in the right market space, etc. It's a changing model, and that's changed certainly from a European perspective in the last, I would say in the last 12 months, probably 18. And it's interesting to think that planning that I talked about will help you define which point in this U shape you are, whether you're on the left side, the right side. If you're in the middle, you might want to take a step back and decide, am I ready to expand into that new market at the moment? In the same way as, you might decide, well, actually, I need to create some more proof points before I go for my funding. So similar principle. So why the UK? It's been a very strong UK start to 2022. So if you look at startup investment, it's the biggest opening we've had on record. We've had $11.3 billion raised up to June this year. 7.9 of that was in Q1. We rank second globally to the US for startup investment, ahead of China and India, which is the first time that we've actually hit that second spot. We've doubled the funding of any other region. So if you look at our funding, we had 34 billion last year compared with 17 billion in Germany, for example. So again, we are well recognized as somewhere where businesses can thrive and can start and thrive. European biggest hub, Bristol and Oxford in the UK are also really, really good locations. Manchester again features highly. So you don't need to have the cost of London. You don't need to be in London. There are plenty of other centres in the UK where we have good technology people, and we have a good opportunity, and there may even be investment breaks in those locations as well for companies coming internationally and locating in them. We're home to 122 unicorns, and we have 248 potential unicorns, which again is behind only the US and China. Demand for talent here is very strong. 8.5 million open vacancies last year. And talent is drawn here. And whatever you may have heard about Brexit, and I will talk about some of that in a second, we do encourage good talent here, and we do provide visas for good talent here, and there is therefore a pool of strong talent for you to tap into, and to help you with that internet, build that international hub that then leads you into that wider European expansion. We are an accepting and nurturing environment for new companies, and that's proved by the fact that we have a lot of VC investment here. We have an awful lot of organisations like BC Tech that support growth into the UK, and a lot of different funds that are available to help that. Obviously, Brexit has made a difference to whether that's an EU fund or not, but what it is doing is it's giving us the opportunity to invest from a pure UK government perspective into certain country relationships like that with Canada, and also to bring people specifically into our country. And language is a significant advantage. It's very interesting. Everybody thinks that English is the technology language of Europe, and that's perfectly true. But when a German says I'll think about that, versus an English person saying I think about it, versus a French person saying I think about it, there's a certain difference in what they mean by that all the way through. So it's worth thinking. The UK, English is the core language, and as a result of that, it's always been an attractive destination for North American companies looking towards Europe, but also for European companies wanting to use us as that bridge across to North America. We have a strong culture of new product adoption. We are the biggest digital marketing market in Europe. We lead the e-commerce, I'd argue, globally in reality. If you look at what Amazon did, they piloted their live drone deliveries here in the UK first. So there is a real recognition of us as being adoptive. Just wanted to refer to the fact a couple of those points, I've highlighted them, have come from Tech Nation Deal Room in June 22, so they're very current figures. So what's not to like about the UK? Well, it's actually some of the things that are strengths that could be seen as weaknesses. And when you look at the competition here, we not just have US, North American companies, Canadian companies, we have Indian, Israel, Chinese companies, Australian companies wanting to come into Europe, take advantage of what is a very strong market, particularly for technology. And we have Europe itself wanting to come to the UK because they feel if they can crack the UK market, it gives them the blueprint to come to North America. Whilst there is a great source of talent here, there is actually currently a talent shortage. Now, that's not unusual in any location, Europe, even North America. So in reality, that talent shortage, it could be argued across the board, but we are one of the more expensive salary markets for highly qualified, technically trained people. I would say at the moment, though, if you're looking to hire native-speaking salespeople, Germany is one of the hardest markets to hire salespeople in. So it does vary a little bit, but again, be aware that can be a challenge. The other thing is what not to like is the British. We don't often like to be sold to. Sales cycles are often much longer because it can take a lot of time to get us into a sales cycle, to engage with us in the first place. We often like to buy by committee, depending upon the market that you're going into. And also, what I'm saying by fourth, fifth generation buyers there is very much what I talked to a moment ago, which is the fact that it's rare that you're walking into a greenfield. A lot of technology is tested here. That startup environment means you might be one of two or three, and there's an awful lot of grey edges these days between technologies, and people are very aware of that here in the UK. And they've often bought systems before, and that does mean that there is a bit of a sales cycle that you often have to go through. Culture and gossip, Brexit. I'm not going to say what I think about Brexit. I think it, when anybody chooses a path to go down, you have to make the most of the path you're on. I think it holds some really significant opportunities for the UK and for companies coming to the UK. As Claudia mentioned earlier, we do have the Canada Trade Continuity Agreement. We've also started a UK-Canada Free Trade Agreement, which will strengthen the relationship. And that relationship's already a strong one. I mean, 19 billion sterling in 2020 in trade between Canada and the UK. Our sense of humour, sarcasm does tend to be our default, which takes a little bit of getting used to for some people. We do have language nuances. You can go 30 miles and one person's accent will be completely different to another person's accent. So if you're in Bristol and somebody says to you, got to relate, you sometimes say, got to relate to what? And actually they're asking you whether you've got a light for a cigarette. So, there's those things you just need to be a little bit aware of when you come here. GDPR is something I think is worth talking about. We have mirrored the EU GDPR as a result of the Brexit situation. We have our own SCCs for data transfer. I think what's important about GDPR is the UK is relatively open from a initial outreach perspective. So if you look at what you can do under GDPR is it's about storage of personal data. Under GDPR, there are certain rules about how you use that data and what you do with that data. But if you look at things like emailing, for example, in the UK, in a B2B context, you don't need people to opt in to be able to email to them in a B2B context, which means that actually we can do quite open outreach. I can send a mail shot on behalf of a Canadian client in the UK, for example. I can't do that in Germany, where I need double opt-in before I can even contact them by email. So again, there's some nuances like that actually GDPR, whilst it is always something to be aware of, doesn't necessarily stop you from doing business and is not designed to stop you from doing business. And from a UK perspective, I think we're slightly more open in our electronic marketing in a B2B context, which lends an advantage. We're a small geography. I have some family in Canada and I know they can drive 8 hours in between houses. So 8 hours here and you've practically covered the country. So you can locate in low cost areas in London, as I mentioned earlier. Bristol, Oxford, great places. Cambridge is a massive technology centre as well for the UK and leads the way in a lot of research for Europe as well. The Commonwealth, that again I think is a real advantage. That with the Brexit situation, I think that's a massive opportunity for the UK that hasn't really been as strongly, and I hate to use the word exploited, but I couldn't think of something else, but strongly exploited as it could be. I think there's a big opportunity there from a Commonwealth perspective. And also, finally, don't be offended if people think you're American or worse, Australian, because it has been known, and I promise you, nobody means badly by it. So if we look at the top 5 don'ts, for me, don't launch before you're prepared. Build the strategy, measure the success step by step. Don't go elephant hunting. Obviously, that is product dependent, but in the UK, the upper second tier and lower tier 1 companies are often more accessible at the beginning. If I'm selling into retail and I go after Sainsbury's, everybody and their dog is selling to Sainsbury's. Whereas if I pick one of these sort of up and coming, maybe mid-tier grocery retailers, I've probably got more chance of winning that first beachhead account. So that's something to consider. Target carefully. Don't try and sell from home. It works where you've got a subsidiary of a customer that exists in your own in your own country. Where I find it really does struggle, time zone differences, local language, speaking the lingo for me is key, and demonstrate that you're serious about coming to the market. That's the same for France, Germany, it's wherever you go. be serious about it by having those local resources. Don't follow and imitate the pack. Make sure you understand your difference. I've mentioned that a couple of times already. Don't launch too early. Time zones do matter. West Coast America, 8 hours difference to us. And in about a week, it's 9 hours for a while. So again, how far you go, that's one of the reasons that the UK is quite favoured, is because wherever you are in North America, we are 1 hour ahead of Europe, and in fact 2 hours ahead of certain parts of Eastern Europe. Finland, for example, is two hours time difference to us. That can actually put you completely out of kilter on the working day, so you need to be a bit cautious of that and be aware of it. So plan, prepare, test before you really invest. What do we need? Professional sales, as I mentioned before, have a salesperson in country. Sales is a profession here. It's a well-respected profession in the UK and in most of Northern Europe. Once abroad, you've really got to transition into a more professional model of selling, because all of a sudden you're not local to that market. You're not in that market, in the same time zone. You're coming to the market. So making sure you've got clear, consistent, value-based messaging is key. You need to sell. You don't need to dump features, but you do need proper training and guides to support either the channel or the direct salesperson that you select. Documented partner program, if that's appropriate. Again, make sure you've got a distribution agreement if you want to use partners to do things. Don't sign up a partner and then say, or get a partner to agree and introduce a customer and then say, oh, we've got to find a way of doing an agreement. Be prepared for that. And hit the market, adapt to the feedback, and adapt fast. And I guarantee it won't be 100% right the first time. Most of the customers we handhold through their European launches and their UK launches, there's at least in that first 12 months, a couple of adapts and tweaking. We do as much planning as we can with our customers up front, but you can't plan for the unforeseen. You just need to react fast to it. UK sales has evolved. Clients no longer want to be sold to. They're self-educated, and this is the same in America, and North America and Canada. The internet has enabled people to become educated about what they want from a product or what they want from a problem. It's also enabled them to do something which, when I first started my sales career in tech 30 years ago, I was educating them to the problem. Often now, there are an awful lot of products that come out there where you're not educating them to the problem. You're telling them why they should be getting the comet's tail of value of a new product with new features, new functionality. So again, it varies a little bit by market, but worth remembering. In the UK, you've got 15 to 20 touch points before you get even into a discovery call. That's an average we find. Certain technologies, it's a lot longer. And remember as well, your brand's not known here in the way that it might be known in your own country. And be aware, be prepared for multi-channel. And because it's multi-channel, and by that I mean digital, telephone, and email, you need to consider content, and content is key. Relationships critical. So any international expansion must include inbound lead gen, outbound lead gen, and local salespeople. Local sales will bring those relationships. What you don't need is a local entity or office, whatever anyone tells you. That isn't a requirement to do business here. You don't need a euro price list. USD is accepted in the UK, GBP, and to be honest, the most I've ever done with a price list is I've put a pound note where the dollar sign should be, and typically that's a reasonable way of judging how that's going to work. You don't need reams of collateral. A one page or a basic deck are often enough. Focus on the content that's going to give you that thought leadership, that knowledge position in a market. And you don't need the wrong attitude. Treat it exactly the way you would with your home territory. Don't treat it, any territory, UK especially, as a poor relation. You've got to demonstrate to our market that you're serious about coming here and that you're in it, and you've got to be in it. And that's really important. So for me, the people that I see fail the most, they don't give it enough time, and they don't give it enough of their own time to succeed, and they don't focus enough on it. It becomes almost a distraction from their everyday, although it was a great idea when they started doing it. So don't make the same mistake. So 3 options on how to go ahead: sell direct, set up offices. Can be expensive, can take time. It's limited as well. You take one salesperson on, you only get one black book. VCs often like the control it gives you, but it doesn't necessarily give you the speed to market that you want. I'd say sign international channels and resellers or partners or referral partners is another way to move. The only difficulty with this model can be that lack of visibility of what's happening at the coalface of the market, and particularly of the forecast. If you've got somebody else doing your selling, you are taking a second-hand piece of information often, however involved you try to be through a partner with the end customer, with the end user. It'll often be a sanitized view that you're getting, and maybe you might not even get that contact at all. So just remember the pitfalls of that aspect. But what channel does do is gives you very quickly a lot of feet on the street. So the pros and cons there. Contract with an on-demand or an outsourced sales professional group. This is a sort of blended hybrid model, if you like. This is what SFE is. You get the benefit of your own dedicated salesperson. You get local management of that individual, so you get that sort of sense of check and balance on how things are progressing, which can often highlight issues before they happen. But additionally, I mean, I mentioned the fact we have a network of over 100 salespeople. We have, I forget the last count, I'm not going to quote it, but we're into hundreds and hundreds of thousands of LinkedIn contacts across our team. And that does mean that we're able to turn around and say, oh, I want to get access to, you know, the marketing director, the CMO of Volkswagen in the UK. And as a result of that, we've got a whole bunch of people who've probably got that connection already. That can help speed things up. And remember, what works at home might not work here, and that is worth remembering. We will give you as much guidance as we can if you come to an organization like us. Channel will give you that. Coming direct, you're really learning that on your own, and possibly in the hands of some strategic advisors that you've got. So I just want to talk about one case study here. Social platform for publishers. This is a company called Livefire. They were struggling to close their EU deals from the US. So year one, we provided a qualified team for a target vertical, which was that publishing and broadcasting vertical. We launched with full-time resources in the UK. We closed our first deal with Time Out in less than 90 days. First 8 months, we delivered over $1 million across 5 different accounts. We really did beat the competition and dominate the market in that first 12-month period. The big win for us was we did the first ever deal that Sky News and Sky Sports have signed on the same piece of paper, and that was really a transitional deal for the market, and also gave rise to quite rapid growth into Europe as well. Year 2 and 3 grew that international team. Total revenue 10 million. 100% of the revenue that came from outside of North America was provided by our team. What was really good was they never had to incorporate. They didn't take on any full-time staff. They were able to flex up and down as they needed. And I helped Jordan, their CEO, with some work on an exit, which was good. We supported that exit by providing the team, our team, to Adobe to become the product experts for Livefire. And I think that was a real big difference. Now, what Adobe liked about that was the fact they didn't have to carry on people's terms and conditions. They were able to take our sales team onto their own books direct, and that meant that it was a very smooth transition and a very easy transition for them. So 300% ROI and a very successful exit to Adobe on that one. And that's my last slide. So questions and answers. Is the Canada brand seen positively as a provider of technology solutions? It's growing, I would say. I think most people recognize North America. I think Canada has improved dramatically with some high-profile accounts that have come out of the territory. So I think it's becoming recognized, and I think what we are seeing coming out of Canada, and what I'm seeing coming out of Canada, is some really interesting health tech, in particular, which seems to be quite well recognised. So yes, I would say the simple answer to that is yes. Um, Technology that's the most interesting in the UK market. That's a really tough question, actually. I think there's always interest in. I mean, our market is quite saturated for things like retail tech and so on. I would say the newest technologies, or the technologies we're really currently very interested in, anything green, anything that measures, monitors sustainability, and looks at sustainability models, sustainability by design. We're seeing quite a lot of that type of thing. Sustainability reporting is also quite key. So there's definitely green tech coming here, which is good. We're also seeing different types of health tech, robotics, and health robotics as well, has been quite well received in the UK market. And again, I think because of places like Cambridge as a campus and as a tech campus, we see a lot of that technology coming out of there. So I think as well, you know, for that technology to come into the UK, it's quite well received. So I see those are the key ones. Technology areas you see the highest levels of interest from customers on. Well, I mean, that I kind of answered that question anyway. I think for me, anything we always see digital media and marketing technology as being really sort of an interest level. The market for it's huge. Any AI based technology that crunches data like marketing data, and any marketing tools as well, we've seen quite a lot of demand for, where they're avoiding, you know, we all talk about the death of the cookie and the privacy and the changes to the Apple technology. And I think those things have driven some really innovative technologies that still give access to market data and demand data for retailers. So that's quite well received as well on top of those. If you have a UK sales rep, do the customers still like to see the Canadian management in the market? For me, I think you need a UK sales rep, but I think you also need that Canadian management. And I think the reason I say that is because no one knows the product better than the people who've worked most closely with it. So it doesn't matter whether I'm here with my lovely English accent selling into my English territory. Actually, you coming across and being seen as that representative of the business to be the evangelist, you know, when I need you in a sales cycle is, in my book, critical. And standing up in front of audiences saying why it's important and so on is critical. And I think one of the benefits of the UK is that we are so multicultural. Actually, people tend to ignore accents an awful lot. So whether you're Canadian, American, Indian, or Israeli, really doesn't matter. I think coming across and doing that evangelizing is important.